I'm Ed Sperling. I'm the editor-in-chief of Semiconductor Engineering. I'm here with Pedro Perez of ClearSoft. He's going to talk today about cataloging IP in the enterprise. So Pedro, when we talk about cataloging IP inside an enterprise, what does that actually entail?
Well, it entails the fact that you decided that you want to make sure that you have a nice and consistent way to reuse the IPs that you've already developed, or in-house, or you've got from a third party. So you want to make sure that you take all these IPs that might be stored in different data formats, in different data silos, in different locations even, and you want to make sure that you push them all into an IP catalog in order to make it available for your whole company.
Well, let's take a closer look.
Absolutely.
Pedro, what are we looking at here?
Well, we're looking at our platform for reuse and share IPs across the company, ClearSoft Hub. And the idea that I'm trying to illustrate here is exactly the process, or the painful process, that it is to take the IPs that you already have and make them available in an IP catalog. In fact, all IPs might be stored in different formats, in different locations, different data silos. So this initial step of actually taking that data, packaging it, and making it available for the users in an IP catalog might be a very, very painful process, in which case Hub has many ways to help you achieve that in as smooth as possible way.
And what are the individual pieces you're talking about between Hub, Git, SOS, and SVN?
Well, this illustration here is illustrating the fact that Hub is able to talk to different data management solutions. But again, the point that I'm trying to make is really that your data currently might be stored in different solutions. And what you want at the end of the day is a unified solution, one that you don't have to care about these little differences. You only have one single platform that allows you to look at which IPs you have, regardless of where they are.
And you're looking at this in aggregate, but also over time too, right?
Yes, absolutely. So Hub, besides talking to all these different data management solutions, well, the whole purpose of Hub is to allow you to manage your IPs. Therefore, you will be able to manage your IPs across time, which means that you will see all the different versions of your IPs that you upload into Hub.
So really what you're doing here is you're taking a look at everything that's coming into the enterprise and saying, hey, we're going to track this from the moment it comes into the moment it's no longer being used, right?
Yes, in fact, traceability is the name of the game. So as soon as the IP goes into Hub, Hub will keep track of all his all his life cycle throughout. So we will keep track of all the different revisions, where your IP is being utilized, what are the components of your IP, what's the activity that is happening around your IP. All that data is being kept inside Hub.
Does it matter that some of this IP may be 20, 30 years old versus some of the stuff that's coming in as brand new?
No, it doesn't matter. So all that information is made obvious to the user, so it's then the user's choice whether to decide whether to use that IP or not. But all the information is made available to the user.
How has the cataloging been done in the past?
Well, I'm glad you touched that point, because in fact, starting the catalog and creating the initial steps to construct this catalog is one of the most painful processes that currently do not have a standardized solution. So there are essentially 4 ways for you to create your IP catalog. The first one is, of course, user-driven, in which case there is a user that goes through the process of packaging these IPs, uploading them into the IP catalog, and defining all the technical aspects of this IP. This is, of course, a very cumbersome and painful process. The second one, which is a better approach and Hub makes it available for you, is the fact that you can define your IPs in an Excel spreadsheet. So in this Excel spreadsheet, you define where those IPs are located, what attributes are important to you, all the different components of that IP, and then this Excel spreadsheet is consumed by ClearSoft Hub, and all that IP is being pushed into the platform and made available. We can make something better even. So Hub offers you a feature which is what we call the Hub Crawler, which is essentially a script that automatically detects your IPs in your environment, collects all this information. You know, it has some smarts in order to detect file patterns and IP components, and then it provides you with a suggestion for this Excel spreadsheet that I mentioned before. So you can then take that Excel spreadsheet, refine it a little better, and the whole process of pushing these IPs into Hub is made much smoother because of this automation that Hub provides you.
How many pieces of IP would you typically find in an enterprise? How big can this be?
Well, it really varies from company to company. It doesn't matter how much. So we have customers with a few dozen IPs to customers with hundreds of IPs. It doesn't really matter because Hub is able to keep track of all of this. And it is also agnostic to where the data is being stored. So you can store the actual IP data into Hub, but Hub is also able to talk to standardized data management solutions that you might already be using in your company.
And with this IP, if that IP is modified, does it keep track of those modifications? Do you have the kind of notes that say, okay, an engineering community is working on this, here's what's changed?
Yes, absolutely. So all the activity around the IP is being kept track by Hub, which means that if new versions of that IP are pushed into Hub, that information is obviously tracked. And not only that, but that information is also pushed to all the stakeholders that might be utilizing the IP or just following that IP. So that information is immediately made available to everyone that is interested in this IP.
You talked about scripts, but really what you're doing here is deeper than that, right?
Absolutely. In fact, this hub crawler feature that I just mentioned is this AI engine that is able to detect your IPs and to capture all these little details that define your IP and then provide you with a suggestion to make this whole process of taking your IPs and pushing them into Hub much smoother than a manual labor of going through the cumbersome task of doing so.
Does it require any specialized hardware because it is an AI system?
Absolutely not. It's an out-of-the-box solution.
Pedro Perez, thanks for a great explanation.
Thank you for having me.